Okay, we're going to have fun. We're going to make some turtles today. It's Tuesday Turtle Day. I have the two turtle quilts behind me. This is Tagalong Turtles, the original. 20 turtles crawling up the wall. At the time I had a bunch of dot fabrics and I wanted to do dotty turtles. So everything is dots. Now the insides are not dot fabrics, but everything on the outs, the turtle fabrics are dots. And then a couple of years ago, I made this, or actually, one of my friends, I think, made a turtle table runner, and it was so nice that I thought, oh, you know, that would be easier, and a lot of people would be interested in making just a few turtles. So, if you've joined us today, and you have either the regular pattern, the Tagalong table runner, or the Tagalong Turtles, or if you have the Tagalong table runner, they will both work because they're both the exact same size of turtle. It's just the arrangement, and as you can see, you have to make more here, and you put sashing of rectangles inside. Here the sashing is rectangles, but there's just a little bit. So, very similar. Now then, it's at 1 o'clock, so we can actually begin. Okay, well, let me see who's joined up. It looks like a lot of people. Oh, I'm glad to see you, Kathy and Pam and Rosemary. Okay, well, to begin, for today, we are mainly making turtles today. We are not going to worry about the stitching down today. That will be part 2, I hope. And I'm really trying to plan to have this done within an hour, maybe 45 minutes or so. I know a couple people have, well, I know at least one person needs to get to something else, and we will record it. So if you don't, if you got to stop for some reason, it's going to be recorded. All right. The first thing you have to do to make your turtle is to choose your fabrics. And before we choose our fabrics, or well, let me say, some of you may have been quilting for a long time. You already have your opinions about what kind of fabrics you want to use, how you choose them, what you want to do, and that's great. If you're a new quilter, or you haven't done a whole lot of quilting, I will just tell you how I choose the fabrics for something like this. Every quilt's different. I like to use a lot of scraps. I don't usually go to, well, I've never bought a kit, for example, but I know some people are more comfortable with that. But if you just have your own fabrics at home, or you want to pick out fabrics at a quilt shop, this is what I would do. I would first decide what my turtles are going to look like generally. And if I like bright, bold fabrics, I might go and find bright, bold fabrics. And if they were for the turtle shell, then probably I would use something that's going to read, no, this is not very bright and bold, but it sort of reads as a plain fabric. This piece of fabric has got several different colors to it, but it does, if you kept in one section, you would have a plain color. I absolutely love this fabric. This is K Facet, and I used it in another quilt, and it's just really wonderful. But if I wanted to use it in the turtles, I don't think it would work very well for those shells, because the shell is not very wide. I mean, you're going to be cutting out a lot of it, and so you might end up with one turtle that's pink and blue and one turtle that's purple and green, and it's just not going to be very cohesive. So keep that in mind. For the shells, you want more of a plain fabric. For the inside, you probably want something that has something I like, something going on. Something, anyway, that will contrast with your shell. Because you're going to be wanting people to notice what's inside. You're going to be doing stitching here. You don't want to do all that cutting and stitching and not have it look any different than if you just put a plain shell there. So, the background can be done however you like it. On this quilt, I did 20 turtles, and then I decided what I wanted to put them on. I finally decided on this sort of sand-colored fabric just because it was not going to interfere visually with my fancy bright turtles. So on what I'm doing today, my background is going to be sort of a plain yellow. I think this is a grunge, and who knows, it might be called, I don't know, light yellow grunge, I don't know. And the turtles are going to be whatever I come up with it. But the outside is going to be, the border is going to be this. I'm just going to do something like a table runner. So this pretty batik is going to be on the outside. So when I make my turtles, I am trying to keep those two things in mind. I'm not going to make a white turtle and stick it on here because it's not going to show very well. Okay, so I'm going to put those up. And the legs, what I did on my turtle, the legs and the head, I used lots of different greens. But I did, on each turtle, use the same fabric because I just thought it made sense. The turtle's head is about the same color as his legs. Okay. So much for that. Now, let's move on. When you're making anything with, these are made with machine fusible web and stitched down with a blanket or a buttonhole stitch. So, when you're doing fusible, you need to, first of all, trace your pattern on, let me go back 1 second before I go on. Here are the 4 sections of our turtle. Shell, inside, sometimes I can keep these up here, and legs with head and just legs. So there's 4 sections. On our pattern, or for our quilt, you're going to need to put fusible behind this and behind the legs and head. And in the pattern, when I first did these, I put fusible behind this middle section. However, and it works fine, you can still do that. But if you don't want to anymore, I've left it out. It's not necessary, it adds bulk. If you're brand new to all this fusible stuff, you might want to put it on just because it's going to give it a little bit, it's going to be maybe a little easier to stick down on your background, but it's really not necessary. If you do want to put fusible on this guy, in the pattern it shows where when I put fusible on a big piece like this, I draw the outside and then I cut I forget what they call this, windowing or something. I cut the inside out so that only the outside is going to be there. That limits the amount of bulk, and so when you're sewing and doing anything to it, it's not stiff and hard to work with. So, okay, what we have to do is use our fusible. We have to first get the pattern onto the fusible. So that means we're going to have to trace our pattern, our templates that are in the pattern. There are probably 10, 12 different kinds of fusibles, Let me see, how are we doing here? Oh, look at all those people that I know. Okay, we're, do we have a question? The fusible appears to be already on the kit, Turtles. Oh, good question. Susie Swanson says that if you buy a kit, the fusible is already on there. Yes, it is. You lucky duck. But if you don't buy the kit, it's not on there. So this is why you're going to have to put it on yourself. And the fusible, there's lots of different kinds of fusible. The kind of fusible that I prefer right now for most things is Steam-A-Seam 2 Light. I just took the paper out of one of those. But you can get this in the store in boxes and get it by the, 2 or 3 yards. That's usually the way I try to buy it. Or you can, I think you might even be able to buy it in 8.5 by 10 sections. I'm not sure about that. But I like this, especially the light. This is light 2. Is that it is repositionable when you're using it. Some fusibles work well, but once you stick them down, then you can't move them if you decide, oh, I like it better here, or I want to move this. This stuff moves. So, okay, we have to look in your pattern, and on the, I don't know what page it is, but I can tell you in a minute. It is on page, well, I don't know. Look in your pattern. It's page 5, 6, something like that. You will, oh, wait a minute. It's right here. All right, it's on page 5. You have a template. You're going to lay that template down and put your fusible on top. If you are using Steam-A-Seam 2 Light, there's a yellow grid side and there's a paper side. Trace on the yellow grid side whenever you're tracing. This is going to be the side that is going to be showing on the back of your fabric. So trace on there, and what I do is I lay it down on my turtle. Well, I started this earlier, so that would be all ready. Let me see, where did I start it? Oh, there I go. Okay. And I usually trace with a pencil. But my assistant told me the other day that a pencil does not show up. I'm going to sit down now so that I can trace better. Okay, so a pencil doesn't show up on the camera, but it will show up if I use a permanent marker. I usually just want to use something that's not going to, if it gets on the fabric, not going to make a mark. But this shouldn't make a mark anyway. So I want you to trace all the way around the outside, like I'm doing, and then trace the inside. And if, as you see, there are some straight lines there. I like to take a little tiny ruler and stick that down. That ruler from top to bottom is a nice way to make straight lines kind of quickly. So I'm going to trace this whole turtle shell, including the oval on the inside, all of these sections. These are turtle sections. And I am not going to, well, I told you, I'm not going to trace the inner shell, but after I get the turtle shell traced, then I'm going to trace the legs and head. They're on this page. Trace those also. And while you're tracing, I'm going to look and see if there's any questions. Before I do, though, let me tell you what I do with this guy. The inside oval, as I told you, you could trace that to make a fusible web. But what I do is I made a plastic template of the center. And then, this is, I don't know which kind of plastic this is. I don't iron over it, so it doesn't have to be ironable. Mainly it has to be see-through. I traced it and I put the hole in the middle, and then this allows me to lay it on different fabrics that I might be interested in and center it for the inside oval. So I can say, oh, let me see what I like at this. Oh, it will just fit there. And I think I want the green part right in the center. Or if you've got other fabrics that have, I guess I must have put it there to put that in the center. Here I wanted to make sure the spiral sort of was in the center. So this is kind of a handy little thing to have to decide what you want for your center fabric. And this is what you will be drawing around to cut your center oval. So I want you to, while I'm jabbering on, I want you to go ahead, trace your patterns, and trace a, you can use the one in the pattern if you can see through it, to trace a center oval. And let's see how we're doing. Any questions? Oh, everybody is just well with us. Hi, Terry. And Marissa and Therese. I wish I had your pattern, Therese. I would show it here. I mean, your quilt. And maybe by next time, we might get enough software or equipment that I can use Keynote and whap up a picture of your Tagalong Turtle table runner. So right now there's one, if anybody's interested, there's a picture of Therese Gray's turtle runner on, I think it's on the website, on Quilts by Others. She did a really pretty one. Okay, well, I hope you're all working hard because I'm not seeing any questions. I guess that's a good thing. You must all know exactly what you're doing. Keep tracing. I would keep tracing, but I am going to put these to the side, and I'm going to show you what I have traced. Oh, look, the magic of this. Oh, here, I could show that. Where's the one I had traced? Is it in here? Maybe. Okay. I have one. There it is. Okay. So I have one of those traced. I have some back feet traced. I have some front feet and heads traced. And now, because fusible is, well, kind of expensive, and you're also going to be putting this on fabric. We know fabric is expensive. If you trace your fusible front legs, and they, there's quite a bit of fusible around the outside, I don't need that, and I don't want to put it on my fabric because it's going to, once it's on my fabric, I can't use it for something else. So I take my paper scissors and I cut just around the outside of my fusible that I have traced. When you're using fusible, you always leave, a 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch outside the lines that you draw. So, if you get yours traced, if you're a quickie tracer, then you can go ahead and use scissors if you need to trace or to cut out right around the edges. So you want your fusible to go all the way, you want your fusible to be sticking out from that line about 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 inch, quarter of an inch. Terry Holland asks if I'm okay with her posting the turtles on our friends group, and I certainly am. I think that would be wonderful. I would love to see your turtles when you get some made. These are these pieces that I just cut off of there. I don't always throw them away. I sometimes use them. You can cut them into little snippets if you don't have a very big piece, and you can use them between quilts and batting and backing. It helps if you want to use them as fusible to hold the thing together. Let's see. Everybody is working, I have a feeling. When you do your outside shell, just cut around the outside of your shell. Do not cut right in through here. Don't cut out these sections yet. That's too much work. We will cut them out when we put it on the fabric. All right. I'm going to be ready for the fusing. Okay, I think I'm going to use these, and I'm going to use these, and I'm going to use these. And I'm going to move to the ironing board. My photographer sometimes has trouble keeping up with me. Make sure there's no other questions. Okay, I'm going to move to the ironing board now. I'm going to do some fusing. I'm trying to move slowly enough. Oh, I can move fast now. All right. Now, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I will slow down. Oh, is that glaring? I have decided that I would like to have a yellow turtle shell. So I am going to press my fabric. It's kind of messy. Please pay not too much attention to the rest of the room. It's not the most luxurious studio, but when you have a small area, you don't really call it a studio. It becomes a sewing room, and that's what I do in here. I do sewing mostly, and well, I do playing around with my ideas. But I suppose if I were famous, it would become a studio, because that's what artists have. Artists don't have sewing rooms, they have studios. All right. Oh, and I don't know how we're doing on the, well, we're doing okay, I suppose. And if you don't keep with us, that's okay. I mean, okay, I'm using steam right now, as you can tell, to get this fabric ready, but I'm not going to use steam for my pressing. So I'm going to turn that steam off. Before I go ahead, let me really quick show you back here this is actually the first turtle quilt that I made. And it's just another idea. Whenever you buy a pattern, I don't care whose pattern it is, I think you should always take that pattern and make it your own. So if you want your turtles to, I don't know, jump through hula hoops or whatever, it's your pattern, make it yours. The first turtle quilt that I made, the first turtles were racing. And these were, they were in blue, so they were racing turtles. And what I did for the insides was I cut strips of different fabrics, and I sewed them together, and then I used those for the inner oval. the rest of the turtles were done the same way we're doing today. And I like that idea. It's perfectly fine, but it took a little more time, and I didn't know whether, that would be something that people wanted to do. So, but anyway, it's another idea for you to do with your turtles. And if you want to put turtles on bags, we keep wanting to put turtles on shirts. We haven't done it yet, but we want to do that. So there's a lot of ideas. All right, I'm going to go ahead and press down. I'm sorry. I moved too fast, didn't I? I put mine on a tote bag. Oh, wonderful. Jody put hers on a tote bag. Now I'm going to move slowly this time. I'm sorry, dear. I can't see over there when I'm over here. Okay, ready to fuse. First thing you have to do, if you have your shell drawn or traced, first thing you're going to do is remove the backing paper. When you start to pull it off, be kind of gentle. You will see the sticky stuff should be on the part that's drawn. If you start to remove your fusible and for some reason you are pulling off the part that has the lines or the drawing on it, then you're going to have to go to the other side. Some fusibles, it's not easy to tell. Make sure that whatever you have left has the lines on it. This is sticky right here. I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to lay this sticky turtle shell on the back of my fabric. And I'm trying to save area here. This is pretty much the yellow all the way across. So I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to press it with my hand all the way down. And if I were going to be keeping this for a while, I wasn't going to be using it right away, then I would probably hit it with a dry iron, just to make sure. And it won't hurt always read your directions on your fusible. Always, always, always. But these directions say that you can use a dry iron to set it, as long as you, I don't think you want to go crazy, but just set it good, and that way it's ready. Okay, and then I have the legs to do. Oh, here's my center. Isn't that nice? That's going to go, I've already drawn it. And what I did was I just took my template and just drew around the back and cut it out with scissors. And then your green, I had my green fabric. Oh, well, I can show it here. Now I'll make a new leaves, a new feet. These are batiks, so I don't really know back from front. They look about the same. Yeah. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pull this off. And I'm going to lay it down so that I can press it down. And if you get to making a bunch of these, you can always put several pieces down at one time. So, now we have to do some more cutting. But we are going to use our fabric scissors for our cutting now. So I'm going to take these over here slowly. Okay, and I am going to cut them out. Now, let's see. If you have some good cutting scissors, some good them. I like these Karen K. Buckley serrated scissors. But if you have any good sewing scissors will work. I cut around the outside just to get him away from all the fabric that's there. And then, I don't know, maybe I should sit. Well, I'll stand up. Cut around the outside right on the drawn line that you did. Cut all the way around the outside. But do not cut into the shell. And I'm going kind of fast here, but this turtle doesn't care. Do you know any jokes, dear, you would like to impart?
Nothing I'd want to share with this group.
Oh. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. I would sing. I said I can't sing. I do sing a lot. It's just not a pretty thing. All right. So once we get the outside of our turtle cut, now we're going to get to the tricky part. And this is something you can do when you're make a bunch of turtles and go and sit down and watch TV and cut them out. And Susie Swanson, since you have a kit, you can just, I don't know, sit and read a book for a few minutes. But the inside of the turtle cutting is tricky. We don't want to cut through this outside business. So we're going to fold that, and we're going to take a little snip with our scissors so that we can get inside, and then we're going to cut. Cut out right on those drawn lines. You don't want to cut on the outside because the shell will be on top of the background, and it will not be, that won't have any stitching in that area, and so if it's washed or handled a lot, it will start to ravel. The fusible will keep the edges from raveling. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to cut out each one of the sections, and you're going to do the same thing in the middle. You're going to go in, make a little snip, and cut. Make a little snip and cut. And what we're doing here on this fusible web business, or this machine fusible applique, this is similar to what you do on any fusible machine applique. Most of it is done in the same way, whether you're doing turtles, outhouses, birds, whatever you're doing. If you are doing a lot of applique and you've got stacks of flowers with things on top, you know, circles and more circles, then you do want to window or cut out some of the excess fusible on the bottom layers so that you don't have fusible and fabric and fusible and fabric and fusible. It really would be tough to sew around all of that. So I'm not going to go ahead and cut the rest of this, but this is what you're going to do. Cut the shell out and the inside out, and you're going to cut your legs out in the same way, and we're going to give you a few minutes to do that. So when you are done, do I have one here that's, no, I have one here that's done. Okay, so we'll use this one. When you're finished, you're going to have 2 sets of legs, 1 shell, 1 oval for the center. And I'm going to wait, 5 or so minutes, maybe 10. Oh, Susie is sipping a Diet Coke and pressing my background. Well, that's a good thing to do. Susie and somebody else, I think, has a kit. So if you have a kit, those fusibles are already applied on the kits. So you get a little break. Oh, that's true. Shelley reminded me that I don't have a problem with sitting down and cutting while I watch TV and things like that. But if you would have arthritis or it's hard for you to cut lots of things out, and you possibly have a machine like a digital cutter, like a Brother Scan and Cut, I think the Silhouette, maybe the Cricut, those things will cut. Now, a die cut machine, those you have to buy a certain shape. But on the ones where you can make your own shape, you can take your pattern, take the pattern here, and scan it into your machine, and put the fabric on. You can scan and cut. That's it's different for every machine, but that's what we have done for some other patterns that are similar to this. So this will work with a scan and cut or a other type of machine like that. Are there any other questions? If you have any questions, you'll have to type them up here and send them in. There's a little bit of a delay, but I'll be glad to help you if I can. Oh, goodness. I guess we need some filler here. You need no jokes. Well, I can show you, here are some of my fabrics that I've already cut out for centers. Got a lot of centers here. Sometimes I start and try to find a fabric for the outside, and then I go and dig around in my fabrics to do the centers. Now I have a few fabrics. They're all hidden right now, but we could show you what I have. Don't judge this organization. Well, here are a few of my fabrics. They're in colors: black, yellow, blue, 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 red, green, green, blue, orange. And then this is organizing, stabilize. This is wool. This is interfacing, floss. This is a little bit of flannel. I have another drawer of flannel. Buttons, scraps, blocks, non-cotton fabric, you name it. I have them all organized. And the other day, if you read my blog, you might have seen that I have now a need for a new box. Oh, and this is not all. This is not all. Under the cutting table over here is fabrics. Over in these drawers are fabrics. And I wish that I had the ability to just like wrap them on boards like I see on TV and all that good happy stuff. But my fabrics are not always neat. They come out with part of a fat quarter or maybe a little snip like that, and I just think, well, I might use that for something. So, and there was something else I'm going to, is there a question there? Reach behind you there, dear, and get my flop there. Backing is supposed to be 1/3 yard, but I have 33 by 17 and 3/4 piece. Can I make it work? Yes, you can.
Your what?
Backing. Oh, see that thing right on the top of that paper plate there? Yes, if you will show me that. Okay. So I have all these fabrics, and while we're waiting, here is, I'm in a group and we do 12 by 12 blocks for a theme each couple of months. And that's what some of these things are up on the tops of my sewing room. But was this month's, or this latest one, and it was called America the Beautiful. So just to give you an idea of my issues, I saw this thing about making quilts from strips. I thought, oh, I can do that. I can make America the Beautiful. Or I can do something in red, white, and blue. Well, I found a bunch of red fabrics and blue fabrics, and I did what I was supposed to do. And then I cut them out the way I was supposed to. And then I ended up with this. This didn't do a whole lot for me. And so, but I learned a lot. I learned what I was supposed to do or how I could position them. And so when I positioned them a little bit differently, and I used a little bit of glue at the top. I mean, you just learn so much by playing around. So this one became the one that I showed my group yesterday. This one is a flop. Well, I didn't have the heart to throw it away, so it didn't go in the trash. So it's a flop. So now I need a box for flops, a flop box. I don't have that box yet. So right now it's just on the table over there. Okay, let's go ahead. Now we should be, or you might be close to being ready to put your turtle together. I meant background. Backing is supposed to be, oh, the background should be enough too, yes. It should be. You are going to just need 3, Susie, I'm sorry, I moved too quick again. You're just going to need to cut approximately 3 big squares according to your pattern, and then you'll have extra to do these. So you should have plenty. I'm moving now again. This is fluid movement. To make our fusible turtles. Pardon me. Okay. When you're working on fusibles, it's always good to protect your ironing surface, even though my ironing surface looks like it's been used a lot. I have an applique pressing sheet. I bought this probably 20 years ago. And it's still good. I use them. I recommend them. If you can find one, you will use it over and over. If you don't have one, you can buy at the grocery store parchment paper. Parchment paper is just like backing paper on the fusible. And it works very well too. I use it a lot also, just to keep sticky stuff off of the ironing board or off of my cutting table. And if you don't know what parchment paper is, then you're not doing enough cooking and baking. It's available at Kroger or wherever. All right, making a turtle. We're going to take our outside shell and we're going to take off the fusible backing. Very gently, pull it off. I usually keep that backing sheet for a little bit. Lay it down on your, can you get close enough here? Lay it down on your pressing sheet so that it's sticky side up. You can do this 2 ways. I usually start with this way. This guy doesn't really have much going on, so it really doesn't matter exactly where I put it. But I'm going to take the oval and I'm going to lay him face down onto the sticky part of the shell. And I'm going to lay him so that he is about in the center. something that you definitely want in a certain place, and you flip him over and he's not there, then go ahead and unpeel and get him situated. I had another one some time ago. I'll show it to you in a minute. That no, that's not it either. Oh well, I'll show it. Okay, here's one. See how these lines, the first time I laid this pink down, the lines weren't lining up. So I had to readjust it, and I could get it to line up. But this one's fine. So you lay them down, and I don't know if you can see through here with the light, but there's enough of the shell overhanging the inside oval all the way around. That's all you have to make sure you have. It can be just 1/8 of an inch, or it can be 1/4 of an inch. So I can see it through the light, but I'm not sure that you can see it. But you need to have that covered up. You want the raw edges of your oval all covered. So then, I think I might, on this part, don't take the backing off of your legs yet. I usually lay it down and I lay the shell on top so that it's in the middle, placed in the middle, and then I might pick it up and look at how he is on the back. I might scoot him up just a little so that he's not sitting on the oval, but then I can press him down, and there should be enough room that he can press down with your fingers, and still I don't know what you call it, the dip here should be covered by the dip should be covered by the shell on the outside, because you want that turtle to look like he's got head and legs. This is my interpretation of a turtle. All right. So that's the top, and then basically you're going to do the same thing on the bottom. You're going to lay the bottom set of legs, or the bottom legs, on the very bottom. There's should be enough room for them to fit in the middle. I'm going to pick him up and look from the, oh yes, he's got legs, he's got a head sticking out, and they're right now, they're just stuck with my hands. But there is fusible right here on the very outside edges. So what I did when I was doing 20 turtles is I put the backing paper back on and stuck it. If you can stick it back on. If it's not sticking real well, then you can flip him over. If you know you're going to be several days, you can flip him over and just touch him lightly. I wouldn't go crazy. You're just doing this because you're wanting to get all the pieces together. Sometimes I would put a paper clip or something up there. So this is one turtle. He's all together in one piece. Okay, let's see how are we doing. Any questions on there? Nothing new? Assistant? This is another turtle that I've made. It's all together in one piece. Here's another one. Now you can do however many turtles you want to do. And if you're super fast and you have some turtles finished and you're ready to move on to the next part, we're not going to sew today, but I can show you what to do as far as placing them on your background. We've got a couple minutes. Let's do it. Okay. And if you're not there, this isn't a showstopper. I mean, this is really pretty easy. I don't want to say easy. If you've never done it, it's not terribly hard, but you can do it at your own pace. Okay, background. Depending on what you're making, you need a background block. Whenever I am doing machine applique, I always cut my background bigger. Just a little bit bigger, maybe an inch bigger than the finished block that I want. So I did cut a background. This is bigger than the finished block. I think it's bigger than the finished block on either one of those. And then in the pattern and in real life, I always take an, oh darn, I'm gonna have to open this closet again. I did forget to have this ready. You can either use magic sizing, or you can use spray starch, or you can use best press, or you can use whatever you have. And now, I spray it and get it nice and wet, and then I sometimes wait just a few seconds, and then I'm going to press it. And I press it with a dry iron because the stuff is wet. So press it with a dry iron. Now this might take a few minutes. And if you use starch, I would do several blocks together, because after you get done, your iron will need to be cleaned. But that's okay, you can do that. It's important when you're doing fusible applique on the machine. If you just use regular cotton fabric that hasn't been pressed with some sizing or some spray starch, it's pretty floppy, and sometimes when you're sewing through it, the cotton will just dip down in when you have stuff on top. It'll go into your bobbin area, or it'll pull up. Well, let me see what that does say. That says, okay, what does the last thing say? What is your iron? Oh, what is my iron? My iron is a Rowenta. It looks big. It's okay. It's not that great. But I go through irons like badly. Oh, I see some. Be careful. Don't get dark. There's some rust in there. Be careful. Would you hand me a paper towel over there? I'm going to wipe that out of there because I don't want that to get on my fabric. It's a Rowenta, Jody. It's okay. It's, I don't know. I try not to be hard on my iron, but I do have to buy an iron every year to every 2 years. I don't know. It could be that the water in our house, it says not to use distilled water. So I use our regular water, and our water is not, the kitchen water doesn't have a softener in it. It's not the best water. That could be the problem, I don't know. Okay, so you're going to apply starch on the front, press it really good until it gets nice and dry. And you can even do it another time. You know, the main thing is you want this background to be as stiff as you can get it, so that it's almost like a piece of paper almost. And now see, that's getting a little more body to it. If you are doing, like for us, we're just going to be applying these turtles with the buttonhole stitch or the blanket stitch. But if you were doing something that required a lot of heavy stitching, this would probably not be enough. You're going to have to use some sort of interfacing or stabilizer or something underneath. Okay, this is good enough for me, I think, for right now. Now, we're going to take and I'm going to use this guy. So we have our background here ready. We have our turtle ready. I took off the facing for the shell. Now I'm going to take off the head and legs sections, or I mean the backing of those. It requires sort of a gentle hand. Oops. Try not to remove the whole leg. Oh, and another thing, if you can't get him, the release paper is tough to get. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just moving over here. Use a little pin and score it with the pin. This is just a straight pin. And that will, see how that makes that paper come off? You don't care if that paper comes. Alright, and then you're going to put this in the center of your square. Now you can put it sideways. Yeah, I think I did. I just eyeballed it. If you're really worried about the exactness, you could fold this square and you know, make a finger press, but it's going to be trimmed later. I just kind of put it in the center and pressed it with my hands. And then I'm going to change my iron now to using steam. So I'm going to have steam because this is steam-a-seam too. If you have a different fusible, you may not use steam, but mine uses steam for this. And this got a nice lot of steam. So I'm going to, I think the directions say to hold it, press it, I don't know, 10 seconds, something like that. Maybe 12 seconds, I don't know. And you press, press, and then let it cool. You can set it aside and go to another turtle. Okay, so we have one turtle ready for stitching. And if you're doing 20 turtles, get busy. You've got some turtles to make. If you're doing 3 turtles, that won't take you too terribly long. And I wasn't sure how long this would take, but I think this has taken about an hour. Let me make sure if there's any questions. No questions too much. So, I think part 2, we will have some more equipment where I can show you better on my sewing machine the kind of stitching that I like to do, this blanket stitch, how I set the machine up, and all of that. I believe it is also in your pattern. If it's not, there's also a spot on my website, www.prestoavenuedesigns.com, that I have down things about using the buttonhole stitch or the blanket stitch. So check out the website if you want to go ahead and try beforehand. That's perfectly okay. How about next, did you say next Tuesday would be best for us, boss? Okay. We think we would like to wait until next Tuesday. Oh, thread. Okay, good point. If you want to use, if you want to get started, there's a question about thread. I like to use, thread that's going to complement and maybe even add a touch of design or a touch of color to what I'm doing. So on this, let's see, what would I probably use? I would probably dig in my thread drawer, and this is some of my threads, but I might try to find something that might, and any kind of thread that you like to use. You can use nylon, cotton. You can go with the heavier threads, lighter weight threads. The only difference on sewing any of these will be the needle that you use. If I want to use this, I'm probably not going to use this one, but this is a very thick, heavy thread. This is a, oh, it says 50 weight. That's not what I'm talking about then. But I don't know if I have any really chunky threads here. But if you do have a really chunky thread, then you're going to have to use a heavyweight needle. So you're going to have to go to a like a 90 14 or whatever needle, maybe even 116, because you want that big eye on the needle. So I would choose, now the greens, I would choose something that sort of goes with this kind of green. And I have a mess of greens, and I have some that are rather plain. So I might use, I don't know, one of these. But I'd like to use something that's, my goodness, this thread is hooked to the drawer. I like to use something that's similar and yet something that's pretty too. And my sewing machine will not handle some threads, so if you have a Bernina, they usually don't like the cheaper threads. They don't like the kind that you can get 6 for $1 at Walmart or something. So just be aware of that. Nylon, cotton, the Superior had good threads, something like that. Okay, anyway, next Tuesday we will try to do part 2. You can go ahead if you want to and play around with stitching on yours. Some of you probably have done this enough. And then show off what you've done. If you haven't and you're a little worried about it, you can always, like I said, check the website, see if there's anything there. I do have a couple of things on doing the buttonhole blanket stitch, so there should be something there. And until next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we should have some more equipment, which will allow me to show you better. And if you have any other questions, put them on our group, and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you trying out this, whatever, so long.
Amateur.
It's amateur hour so long. But hey, we're doing what we can do, and it's kind of fun to see all my friends there anyway. So, see you next week. Thank you again. PrestoAvenueDesigns.com. Put pictures on our group or wherever. We'd love to see what you have. Bye. See you later.